My name is Heather Moore. I'm the whistleblower investigator that just sent the introductory email, basically, to the Burlington City Council about how Mayor Weinberger, his police department, and many of those contracted with the city, Safe Harbor, A New Place, COTS, Howard Center, steps that are contracted to handle homeless and domestic violence victims, are working with University of Vermont, Cuomo, and his now resigned corrupt Department of Health officials, as well as Trump and Sniffy and Obama's, all of their health officials, some of which are hospital CEOs, the CEOs of these massive monopolies by Catholic Health, Banner, Honor Health, the Goldwaters, basically maintain segregation and implement very lucrative final solutions. And I'm using those terms broadly. I'm not going to go into all the detail of how that works. But this video is to kind of give you a video statement. For, my typing is no good. The neuropathy in both hands is so bad because of the cancer throughout the lymph node system. I've actually got my hand tucked under here. It's burning and on fire. It feels like somebody's holding a blowtorch to it. I had a lot of pain in my neck and down my shoulder, and that was only 4 hours. I didn't go into a lot of the detail, but basically I want to sum up to you that Weinberger, his police department, and contractors, and their attorneys, and investigators for those attorneys, and others that are either registered sex offenders that were hired by these attorneys, which Chad is certainly capable of that. He hired me as a felon, but he also said that my felony conviction was illegal and was a result of Brady violations, and launched a federal Chapter 119 lawsuit to remedy it. He got another a lady who was convicted multiple times of various drug charges, felony drug charges in Florida, elected to the Orlando city as a city commissioner. I believe it was city commissioner. And I'm not saying that that's wrong to do. She was African American and perhaps Native American. We were all enslaved together. She wanted to help her community, and she was the best person to do it because she was the victim of that Joe Biden Jim Crow crime bill super predator rhetoric. But what I'm saying is, I'm just letting you know that they know Chad routinely. He's claiming to be progressive and hiring and helping convicted felons, especially those of us who are minorities who were targeted because of the crime bill, when what he's actually doing is making us easy. He wants easy scapegoats when he commits crimes. He can put it off on us. And that's why I'm not as angry with registered sex offender Daryl Galloway, who Kevin Pounds and Heather Bush and Tuna and Jake and Marcus and Weinberger were using to try to get close to me to win my sympathy, because they know I'm a radical advocate. They know I'm the real deal. I'm the agent doing her job. They're the other guys. So basically, to sum up that email that I sent, these are violent sexual predators. And Mr. Masturbator, he's one of their investigators. And I think the sheriff already knows who it is, because when I spoke to Lieutenant Horton, he didn't even ask for a description. He didn't ask for the $5. Mr. Masturbator, the guy that was jacking off around my camp, and very likely the other encampment over on Shelburne Road behind the old Hannaford. And the way it's set up, it's hard to describe how there can be two, but there was two separate encampments. I was by myself, and I was directly behind the new Hannafords. I could hear the trucks loading. I could hear the people on the docks. I heard the dogs barking, wanting food at Chittenden Humane Society. My snoring would set them off barking sometimes. I was over there. They were behind Lowe's. Okay? They were so loud, and the two violent predicate felt true white predicate traffickers and rapists that were date raping women by drugging homeless women who had plenty of money, and in fact one of them worked for his parents' business, construction business. He made $20 an hour. He's not homeless because, oh, I'm homeless, I'm down on my luck. He wants to party and camp and play and party 24/7 and rape women. He's not interested in, having an apartment, paying bills, because he couldn't pull the crap that he pulls at an apartment. Like he had weapons that operated on a gas cartridge. He would throw that into the fire to watch it explode. You can't do that in an apartment. You're going to get put out. However, the other homeless people that were down at that encampment with him were his victims, him and a guy named Ben. But the point is, Cuomo and Weinberger's and Goslin's and their attorneys, private investigators, I call him Tent Slice Joe. He got a job at Ali Kebabs to try to convince me he wasn't a cop. So they'll have all of his social security number, all of that. And Mr. Masturbator and Bill Kinnear. I don't know if Kinnear was involved, but basically Tent Slice Joe was running between the two encampments, telling them that I was putting the police on them. They were firing weapons above my camp. And this is all very important. This all is related to the Sears Lane stuff. So you got Mr. Masturbator, who's got caught by me actually jacking off outside my tent. The other campers caught him lurking and questioned him, what are you doing here? He couldn't give them a straight answer. That is not a place where people really hike. It's too steep. It's too overgrown. There's that little creek there, but it's so steep, it's not nice enough it's not safe enough really to hike back there. So they knew that. They knew this was not an attractive place to come hike or hang out. Too much deadfall, too many widowmakers. It was just really not safe. So they knew. That's why they asked him, what are you doing back here? That means they're all witnesses to the I don't even know how many crimes Mr. Masturbator committed by going to my camp on behalf of the police department and jacked off because he was getting off on helping them rape and lynch a Native American LGBT female autistic whistleblower whom they are murdering with deliberately accelerated and untreated cancer. And when I say untreated, I mean not on an official level where there's actual medical records being kept and the Department of Labor and OSHA is, doing something about it and investigating. I'm getting minimal treatment that's keeping me alive and keeping me feeling well. All easy, safe, relatively inexpensive, effective remedies that these doctors know about and are deliberately withholding. Safe Harbor almost killed another cancer patient. Luckily, she had a sister who was a nurse at Dartmouth, and they immediately launched an investigation. What are your doctors telling you? They could see her medical records and see that it wasn't consistent with what they were seeing, and that's why they want to know what her doctors were telling her, because they wanted to hear what lies Safe Harbor and University of Vermont was telling this lady who was dying of sepsis, not cancer. They had, when she went to their ER, she was in the ICU for several weeks to get the sepsis dealt with, blood transfusions, vitamins, before they did the surgery and got rid of the cancer. And that's Dartmouth investigating UVT and a safe harbor patient. So what I'm saying is, because we all witnessed, all of us were witnesses to this sexually perverted private investigator, and another one named Joe who was going between the two camps lying to get them mad at me. Two of those other campers, the two violent ones that were trafficking, were felons in illegal possession of firearms with outstanding warrants. Yet nothing was done to them because they were too busy, the police were too busy using them and inciting violence against me by going and prompting them to commit violence against me, coming to my camp, throwing rocks at some old TV that somebody had dumped, calling me nigger cunt. Because I'm native, I'm not white. I'm light-skinned, but I'm my last name Moore was the name of the people who owned my great-grandparents as Native American slaves. So anyway, all those people are witnesses. And so I kept Weinberger and their lawyers admitted in the court hearing, which we weren't actually in a courtroom, but it was all audio recorded by the court and myself because we had to call in on a conference call. Paul Dragon's lawyers tried to make a motion to have Judge Hoare tell me not to record an already recorded court hearing with public officials being accused, where I'm trying to get a restraining order against Paul Dragon to stop using his subordinates and fellow co-workers and affiliates at ESD, Economic Services Division, University of Vermont, CVOEO, Safe Harbor, and all these people to quit threatening me and falsifying. This restraining order is to get him to stop abusing his public power to stalk me and troll me, and sending masturbating private investigators to my camp. The lawyer quotes my Facebook page, which I posted something inflammatory to press their buttons, hoping they took the bait. Quoted my Facebook page. What are you doing watching my Facebook page? And then trying to get a judge to tell me not to post a recording of a public hearing where you're a public official, aka a cop, being accused of stalking and abusing your public power, and then trying to get that judge to tell me not to post the recording to Facebook. That don't even make no sense. So basically, what I'm saying is they're watching my Facebook page, and I mentioned once I saw the Sears Lane encampment was closed down, I realized he's trying to make it look like he's targeting all the homeless encampments when he wasn't. He targeted our homeless encampment. I was deathly sick. They thought I was going to die any minute. Never thought I would live long enough to sort through all their lies and expose them. I'm posting that shutting down those two camps, my single camp and the other camp behind Lowe's with the Pomerlows, was witness and victim and evidence tampering, bulldozing both camps, lying and saying there was human waste around my camp when there was not, as theirs was. I think that's what they used that as an excuse. Oh yeah, she's doing it too, to bulldoze it, in hopes that they would destroy the evidence that Mr. Masturbator left in his ejaculate. But didn't bulldoze the areas where Mr. Masturbator was jerking off. So a forensics team might still be able to go down and spray luminol and find that. So now I'm exposing that they shut down those two camps on false pretenses, never sent anybody to my camp to advocate for me as a domestic violence victim, and I recorded myself telling the police that their own officer played a role in the retaliation and the domestic violence that had me out there in the first place. She let it go in one ear and out the other. Oh, no, Internal Affairs doesn't handle that. When does Internal Affairs not handle corrupt cops tampering with evidence? And Sergeant Brunel was there. The other guy was there. The other officer was recorded asking me, what's HIPAA? How do you not know what HIPAA is? If you don't know what HIPAA is, you damn sure can't be respecting it. HIPAA violations are a felony, which is what all these officers are doing. When they're helping doctors lie on patients and helping them tamper with patients to support the false psychiatric and criminal allegations in those medical records, that's HIPAA violations. Falsification of medical HIPAA isn't just about privacy. It's Health Information Privacy and Portability Act. Privacy only applies to the patient. It doesn't provide privacy for the doctor. And portability means to share that information, meaning it's as much about, health information, portability. No, I got that wrong. Health Information, Portability, and Accountability Act, meaning those records have to be accurate. When you go see a doctor, the product they're selling isn't them gracing you with their presence and writing prescriptions and treating you. You're paying for accurate medical records. That's per the ACLU's Patient Rights Handbook. So you cannot bill a patient for falsified medical records. That's why I recorded the patient advocates at ECMC saying, well, since we falsified the records and you're in here on the psych ward under false pretenses and it's all fraud, we can't bill your Medicaid. So how are you going to pay the bill? I said, you can't bill me either. So they didn't bill my New York Medicaid, turned it over to collections. So I got the collection supervisor on the phone and I said, I'm covered by New York Medicaid. They're mandated by law to bill that Medicaid, but they're not following the law because they falsified all those records and don't want to get popped for False Claims Act violations. I said, ergo, you can't try to call me and collect on these bills because I'm not liable for them. They are mandated to bill any insurance that's covered. He says, you're right, we can't. So I got no more calls. Once the different hospitals turned those fraudulent bills over to different bill collectors, and they all stopped calling me once I told them I'm covered by New York Medicaid retroactive back to December 2018. But they weren't billing my New York Medicaid because they didn't want to get hit with False Claims Act violations, at least for the bills they were trying to collect on. They did eventually start illegally billing my New York Medicaid. So it's not like they haven't confessed to everything I've said. And I offered all of this evidence to the police. I've sent emails to the Vermont Attorney General, to the New York Attorney General, the Vermont Department of Health. Nobody wants to see it. I recorded Copeland Galore. Sounds complicated. Dr. Copeland Galore. I offered to show her evidence that she was knowingly, falsely diagnosing that lymph node as a benign lipoma. Sounds complicated. She doesn't have the option to not report work comp injuries to the Florida Department of Labor and OSHA. She does not have the option. It is not optional for doctors to not report EMTALA violations by previous hospitals that are about to cost the Vermont taxpayers a fortune. So I'm posting all this on Facebook saying that shutting down those two camps and pitting us against each other, using these private investigators, masturbating, slicing private investigators to pit them against me. Luckily, I met up with a couple of them outside of City Hall. We were on the City Hall Park side, kind of not right next to the building, but in the grass, very close to the steps. Weinberger comes down, bounding down the steps, walks towards his car, does a complete 180, turns and looks at me and waves. The two other people that just got ran out of the camp, their other camp, I was telling them Weinberger did that to fuck with them because they saw their private investigator that was down there masturbating. Whether they caught Mr. Masturbating jacking off or not, they saw the guy at their camp. They know he was down there. I said it's witness and victim tampering and evidence tampering. Right then, Weinberger comes down. They looked up at me like, holy shit, she's right. We're getting fucked with by the police because that guy we saw lurking works for the police and works for... Weinberger snitched himself out right in front of the other campers. That guy who saw Weinberger do that is the one who got locked up for 7 months on a domestic. His street name's CeeLo. Last name's Rodriguez. He's Native American like me. He's from Puerto Rico. That's indigenous to North American continent. That's racism. Didn't mess with the real bad guys who were doing real harm. The two white guys, Ben and Al Hennessy, who was on probation for violence. Did nothing to them because they were coming after me. But CeeLo was sticking by me and listening to me and trying to help me. So they locked him up on a petty... I'm not saying he didn't do it. Maybe he did do it. But he didn't hurt anybody bad enough to be locked up for 7 months. Those other two guys raped a woman. She got the police. I mean, they were down there on domestic and rape allegations and all kinds on repeatedly because of Ben and Al. Yet nothing ever happened to them, even though they had outstanding warrants, were in illegal possession of firearms. One of them fired a gun at CeeLo to threaten him right in front of me. Police didn't care that he was illegally discharging a firearm at Native American peoples, including firing over my camp. In a public place with a store right there in a humane society. So I'm posting all this on Facebook, what they've openly confessed to watching in the courtroom, which all of you at the city council can easily make a request. If you want the case number, I'll give you the case number. I'll send you the link if you want. And you can hear it for yourself. That's why Judge Hoare's backing him up on shutting down the Sears Lane camp. Judge Hoare knew about Mr. Masturbator. That's why I applied for the temporary restraining order. And Judge Hoare didn't even want the guy's description. That's the thing. None of these public officials, not the judge, not the lawyer, not Paul Dragon, who are supposed to be these wonderful heroes, none of them asked for the description of the guy that I caught jerking off around the tent and the other campers saw around their tent, where there were women as well. They already knew. They knew that he was their agent. So Judge Hoare is equally as guilty of targeting our camp, and that's why he backed up Muriel Weinberger on shutting down the Sears Lane camp, because he was doing that to make it look like he was being tough on homeless encampments and not just targeting our camp, is what I'm saying. All to cover up the sex crimes by his own agent. I don't care whether Mr. Masturbator is just a friend of Paul Dragon's, whether he's a friend of Muriel Weinberger's, a friend of... But whether he's actually on somebody's payroll, he's acting on behalf of the police department, the mayor, and Cuomo, and Trump, and Sniffy, and Kamala, and my ex-boyfriend who's a cop, and Bess Sweeney who was at a clinic where the Medicaid director was the chief psychiatrist. A Medicaid director appointed by Clinton crony Governor Jay Nixon, who was so racist during Ferguson. Him and Chris Koster helped cover up what happened in Ferguson, which was a result of falsified medical records. The doctors red flag us, and then the police come after us and target us. Just like Nazi Germany, the medical establishment was more guilty of what happened in Dr. Speer. The medical establishment was very guilty of most of those atrocities. And the Nazis were inspired by U.S. policies. Nothing's changed. So basically, I just wanted to, typing is very painful. So what I'm doing is I'm making these video statements for you. Number one, so you can hear the inflection in my voice, which is very important. See that I present very well, and because of my autism, I try to take the easy way out to communicate things in the easiest manner to save breath. I've got multiple cancer lesions in both lungs, so talking for any amount of time can result in chest pain, shortness of breath. It can be very uncomfortable. But I was in so much pain just from typing that out yesterday. I'm just doing this to give you a summation so you can see for yourself that these doctors and cops and politicians know damn well I'm not schizophrenic. If you're going to diagnose someone with schizophrenia, you first have to take an MRI, do an MRI to make sure there's no tumors, there's no hemorrhaging, there's no trauma. You have to rule out any medical issues. And an MRI, if there's schizophrenia, will show the lesions on the brain. They have to do the MRI regardless, so they know where the lesions are, what type of lesions they are, so they know what type of medication to prescribe to keep the patient comfortable, asymptomatic, or if they're a violent schizophrenic, which I've never seen one other than the guy John Hinckley Jr., who shot Reagan. I'm sure there are some out there, but most of them are not. Point is, they have to do that MRI to see where the lesions are so they know how to help manage the schizophrenia. They're not doing an MRI on me because it's not going to show schizophrenia. It's going to show an autistic brain. My MRI is going to look very much like Temple Grandin's. And it's going to show the cancer in both sinuses. I believe at the back of the head, I had the very distinct pain and swelling and sharp lightning strike pain. And we immediately hit it with antibiotics that kill the mitochondrial in the cancer, and thus the infection, and wiped out that doesn't mean it isn't there. That doesn't mean it isn't active. We have to do that every so often. That's another reason for these private investigators. They're trying to find out who's treating me and who's keeping me alive. They know I'm not a doctor. They know I'm not a lawyer, yet we've out legally maneuvered them and out medically maneuvered them for 9 years almost. So they know I've got help from somewhere. That's not to say I'm not brilliant, because all they're doing is making suggestions. Try it. I tweak it, put my own spin on it, doing my own special diet that keeps the stress off the liver and kidney. So what happens when you have cancer, you go septic, that infection gets in your digestive system, shuts down your kidneys, your liver, and then when you go into renal failure, you're not emptying, you're not pulling the water off and getting rid of the water, you're not peeing. So that fluid builds up over your heart and lungs, causes pneumonias, congestive heart failure, amongst other things. It can build up on your brain too. So as long as you've got your kidneys, what I used to do before I had access to what I needed to treat the sepsis, I would quit eating for 3 or 4 days and just sip Gatorade so that I didn't get dehydrated. Oh, the renal failure, when you're going septic, it also keeps you from absorbing the nutrients in your food. So you stay hungry, you eat more, then you shut down, go into further renal failure and heart failure. I had multiple heart attacks. I've got nitroglycerin. The stress tests in Florida showed history of MI. I was having heart attacks. Plus the severe blood loss. I still have a uterine mass that ruptures and causes me to hemorrhage very badly. But because of liquid vitamins, vegan protein, organic vegan protein powders, and collagen powders, and a whole lot of other supplements, it's not killing me. I'm staying well hydrated. I don't drink soda. I have maybe 1 or 2 cups of coffee a day. That's it. So diet is very important. They know this. It's doctors that taught me this. So this is all stuff they already know. They're just not telling people. So they will keep ending up in the ER at 10 grand a pop, so they can put them in the ICU at 20 grand a day. And there are so many doctors and nurses blowing the whistle on this, yet the media isn't covering it. The governors and Congress and all the oversight officials in both major parties, that's why I wrote, that's who I could get no oversight. Homeland Security profits, FBI just get, they get promoted and get lucrative corporate security jobs, so they just blackmail these people. You can't rely on Health and Human Services. Lloyd Dean, Barack Obama's pal Lloyd Dean, who helped create the Affordable Care Act, which is the biggest healthcare fraud scam in U.S. history, that created these monopolies and created medical martial law. He's the CEO of what's now called Common Spirit Health, a $30 billion a year tax-exempt nonprofit. Obama appointed him to a Health and Human Services state oversight official. Health and Human Services is supposed to be doing oversight on the falsification of medical records. So, Virginia G. Piper, a.k.a. Peggy Goldwater, a.k.a. Carol McCain, Homeland Security agent. She's got the Virginia G. Piper Cancer Treatment Center at Honor Health and the Virginia G. Piper Cancer Research Foundation. When that Dr. Copeland-Galore tried to refer me to Gastro, who was going to remove this big, huge mass, this lymph node full of cancer, she wants that so she can patent. They can break all that down and see everything I've been doing to survive, and then she, like Henrietta Lacks, make a fortune off my tissue. My work, our work as an AA team, all of whom are being threatened. So that means Weinberger can sit in a Florida jail cell, regardless of who agrees to extradite. They'll send bounty hunters up to get him. Him and all these fools. You don't threaten a bunch of Florida cops and lawyers and doctors without thinking there's going to be consequences. So, anyway, when Copeland-Galore made that wrongful referral, that was just a greedy, and her greed, their desperate need, they thought I was going to die any minute. And they're not falsifying all these records unless the medical examiner. Let's put it this way. My cancer, accelerated cancer, the evidence is so obvious, visibly, that as soon as my body landed on the medical examiner's table, if he were honest, he would be launching an investigation into murder right away. So your medical examiner is as much involved in these scams as everybody else. And I call it. If you go back and look at my Facebook page, the day George Floyd, that video went viral, I shared, the medical examiner's going to cover the cops' butts. Sure enough, 3 days later, the medical examiner blamed George Floyd's death on COVID. I'm paraphrasing, but that's why Ben Crumb, not that he's an honest lawyer, hired 2 independent autopsies. The medical examiner who handled the Eric Garner case in New York, the other I Can't Breathe case, and then he hired a lady from, I think, University of Minnesota or Wisconsin or Michigan, University of Michigan. Both